Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I am Sean. Here's another week in review. First, before I forget it, I usually talk about like recent deaths at the end of these videos, but since I don't want to forget about it, I just looked up recent deaths and one of them was today or yesterday, I think it was yesterday, one of the like Munchkin children from the Wizard of Oz. One of them just died, so they were 94. And this is weird to me because I've been watching the Wizard of Oz like every night for the last couple weeks, and literally last night I was just thinking, you know, I knew a few of the like Munchkin children were still alive, and so I was just thinking like, man, that'd be kind of cool to actually meet one of them, to actually meet someone who was in the Wizard of Oz. And so yeah, this morning checking the recent deaths and one of them died. So I imagine there can't be much more than like one or two left alive, if any. So yeah, just kind of amazing that anyone from that picture would still be alive. But anyway, on to books. So currently reading, the only book I did not read this past week was Milan Kundera, the Book of Laughter and Forgetting. No particular reason. I'm liking it pretty well, just didn't get around to it this last week. Next, this is kind of funny. I finished The Sign of Four by Arthur Conan Doyle, so the second Sherlock Holmes book. In my last week in review video, I was talking about how I was not looking forward to reading the final chapter of The Sign of Four because it was kind of a longer chapter and I had a problem with the previous book, A Study in Scarlet. That story ended with a really long set of chapters featuring the like criminal suspect, kind of showing why he did what he did, the backstory of that character. And I thought that was kind of boring because midway into the story, Doyle is his last name, not Conan Doyle, he spent probably 30 pages or something like that talking about the backstory of this murder, and I just kind of didn't like it because it was getting away from Sherlock Holmes. Like, isn't this supposed to be a Sherlock Holmes book? Why is the final half of the book just talking about this guy all the way across the world and his backstory? So I didn't really like that, so I thought he was going to do the same thing for the next book, The Sign of Four, and so I said in my weekend review video that I was not looking forward to that, and I suggested that he weave the plot reveal, kind of like the murderer's confession, into the story. Like if Sherlock Holmes could actually interview the murderer and the murderer tell his backstory that way, so Sherlock Holmes is actually there, he's actually present, and that is exactly what he did in that book, The Sign of Four. So Sherlock Holmes was there. So that was like, oh, this is exactly precisely the thing I wished he would do, would be to end the book this way, and he did. So that kind of redeemed it a bit for me. I'm kind of a little bit reluctant to keep reading because I'm not even halfway through this book and there's another volume as well. This is only the first volume. And it's kind of like, okay, I enjoy the Sherlock Holmes stories well enough, but I don't really want to keep reading the second half of this book plus more, plus a whole other volume of this book. I'd kind of rather read some other stuff. What I do realize though is that this is not actually on my 26 to read in 2026, I believe. So I could just put this aside and just read the rest of these books later and pick up another book on my to read list for my currently reading. I might do that. I'll have to double check and make sure this isn't on my 26 to read in 2026. If it's not, I might do that. I might just put it aside. Even though I'd like to finish this book just so I could get it off my shelf, it would take me a real long while to finish the second half of this book. And I'm only like not quite even 40% of the way through it. So yeah, I might be putting this series aside, not because I'm not liking it, just because I'd rather read something else. Next, I read another chapter or two of A Gentleman in Moscow by Amor Towles. I've said how I like this book pretty well. I'm kind of getting a little bit iffy for these last couple chapters because it's talking about this girl he meets, and even though I kind of wanted her to be a major character, I'm not so much liking their interactions kind of. So it's kind of like she is just showing him around the hotel, like the secret spots in the hotel, like where's the best thing, where's the best room to view whatever, or what's in each room or whatever. And I don't know, it's just kind of like, I'm losing interest a little bit. I've been curious where this book is going to be heading, and I actually wound up and read the back of the book to kind of see, like, what is this building toward? And it said something about how the prince is, like, I don't know how to say it exactly. Well, hopefully you've actually read this book so you know how it goes. But it's something to do with that girl. And then I flipped through the book just looking for character names to see which character names repeat a lot, just to see, you know, who features a lot as a character. And I really didn't see her too much at all, really. So I don't know. I don't know about this book. I mean, I like it. I like the writing. I like the storytelling. I like the characterization. I like pretty much everything about it. But there's still something about it that's not really compelling me to read it. And the last chapter was actually a chapter where I was kind of like, I'm not really enjoying this. The other chapters, I thought, this is good. This is entertaining, you know? I like this. But the last chapter I read is just, I'm not sure if I like the way where this is going. I will still probably like automatically give this book 4 stars just because of the strength of the first 3 chapters or so. But yeah, it's kind of getting a little bit closer to a DNF. If I run into a couple more chapters where I'm like, not really liking this, I may just put it aside. And I mentioned in my last weekend review, it's kind of a longer book and I'm taking a while to get through it. Like I've been reading this for probably a few months now and I'm only like 15% into it. So if I was to continue reading this book all the way through, it'd probably take me like 8 months or whatever. And I just don't have the time for that. So we'll see. The next few chapters are going to be crucial for whether I continue reading this or not. Even though I'm going to give it a more positive ranking or rating just because of the strength of the first 3 chapters or so. Last, I read a chapter or 2 or 3 of Robert A. Heinlein's Starship Troopers. So I am actually past the halfway point in this book. It has gotten into the war with the bugs, but I kind of don't really like as much that we basically saw one quick battle with the bugs and then the next chapter was all personal kind of stuff. Like he was, I don't know how to say, but he wasn't actively fighting the bugs. He was just like on break or whatever on the base or whatever. And so it's just him talking about whatever. And then he was kind of talking more about the bugs again. So I don't know. I was hoping to maybe get a little bit more about the bugs or whatever, to show a little bit more of the battles. But he kind of touches on them and then just talks about other stuff instead. So I don't know. I'm liking it well enough. For this book, I kind of went in thinking this book was going to be bad because the director of the movie Starship Troopers, Paul Verhoeven, he DNF'd this book. He could not read it because he was so bored by it. So he had someone summarize the book for him and he made the movie kind of based on their summary and also just making the movie the way he thought it should go, which I think is pretty hilarious. So I went in thinking this book would be kind of bad. I don't think it's that. I think it's a pretty interesting story. Not great, but not bad either. I think it's just okay. And that's kind of what my impression was of Stranger in a Strange Land, the other book I read by Heinlein. I read like 90% of that book and then gave up because I just did not like where it was heading at the end. So yeah, my impression of Heinlein, I think, is I like his books well enough. I like parts of them very well, but other parts just kind of seem to drag a little bit or just not really go in the direction I'd like them to go. I think kind of my issue with him is I wish he would lean a little bit more into certain things. Like, what I think makes the film so good is it really leans into the satire elements of it. And so for this book, Heinlein was actually kind of doing the opposite, where he wasn't really making fun of this really militaristic society. He was actually kind of promoting that. I wish he would have leaned into that a little bit more and gone a little bit even more overboard with that. I don't know. Because he keeps trying to kind of draw back a little bit and make the book seem very believable. And it is, like, things seem just very real world. But then he'll sprinkle in more things that he wishes were more part of our society, like really firm discipline and all that. So, yeah, I don't know. I like it well enough. I don't really agree with every choice he did, so I like his books, but I don't love them, but I definitely don't dislike them. But I will at least say for this book, at least it's a shorter book. Stranger in a Strange Land was kind of long, so this book is definitely quite more bearable. It's not as wordy as Stranger in a Strange Land. Between the two, though, I would probably reluctantly have to give the nod to Stranger in a Strange Land, just because I really liked some of the characterization, especially of the character Jubal in that book. I really liked Jubal. I can't say I like the main character of this book, Rico. He just seems kind of a little bit like a bland guy. So maybe I wish he had a little bit more personality. But yeah, that is it, I think, for my reading update. Oh gosh, you guys, I ramble so much. I just recorded about 20 minutes of me talking about my books, and I just knew I'm talking way too much. People aren't going to like this. No wonder you guys don't like me talking about my writing. So I'm just going to film that all over again. And I'm going to be as brief as I can. So early this past week, I worked on one chapter of Babylon Dithers. I wrote a chapter where Trevor is going on a weapons delivery. So I wrote that. It's pretty good. It's just a short chapter though. And so I was wanting to write again, but I was really quite feeling depressed. I wasn't in the mood to work on the Trevor Knight series. So I decided to actually maybe begin working on the Blade of Perdition series. And so earlier in the week, I was asking AI a bunch of questions about my Blade of Perdition series. I uploaded kind of the main climactic battle book in the series, and I was asking it questions about that book and all the characters and stuff. And this is where I was just going on a rant for 20 minutes. And so that conversation with the AI really got me a bit more interested in my Blade of Perdition series. And so a couple days ago, maybe 3-4 days ago, I was asking it questions about the prequel book, because basically for the Blade of Perdition series, which I've actually talked about more on my channel than I thought I have, there's the Blade of Perdition series, which is sort of the main series. And then there's a sequel to that, a spin-off sequel. And then there's going to be 2 prequel books. So I was asking the AI questions about the first prequel book, just kind of to brainstorm that and try to get some of the plot together in my head, just asking questions about the characters who would appear in that book, kind of getting research about those characters. And after several hours of talking with the AI about that, it just got me more interested in that prequel book. And so the next day, I decided I'm going to try to actually write this. So I have not started writing that book at all. So again, there's the main series, then there's a sequel book, then there's 2 prequels. I am actually working on the final couple books of the main series. So the main series isn't even fully completed yet. So, you know, I was like, well, I'm kind of in the mood to work on the prequel book. So I actually started, and so about 3 days ago, I wrote the first chapter, and then the next day I wrote the second chapter, and then yesterday I wrote chapter 3 and chapter 4. So that book is actually in progress. It's a brand new book for me for writing. I haven't written anything about it until this week. So that has officially started. So I actually also came up with a title for it. I decided to name the book Descent, or The Descent of Inanna. Inanna is the main character. She is a Sumerian goddess, and so she's the protagonist of the series. And it's kind of a little bit of a double meaning, the title, The Descent of Inanna, because one of the main things that happens in Sumerian lore is Inanna famously descends to the underworld. So it might actually potentially be called that, The Descent of Inanna. Or I don't know, maybe it's called Inanna in the underworld or whatever, but Descent of Inanna sounds like it might be the title of that old myth. But also it shows sort of her fall, because the entire prequel book is going to show her rise and fall, basically. Kind of thirdly, it also relates with the main series, because the first book in the Blade of Perdition series is called Descent. So calling the first prequel book The Descent of Inanna keeps with that theme. And the second book of the Blade of Perdition series is called Ascent. So what I actually kind of decided is the sequel book. I was going to call that book The Tragedy of Muriel, but what I decided is actually to kind of bookend it. So there's the Descent of Inanna, and then the sequel book could be called The Ascent of Muriel. And what I've actually been thinking, what I would like to do is to have a different title inside the book, The Tragedy of Muriel. Kind of my idea is to give it a false title. So one title would appear on the cover and all that, but then when you open the book and get to like the title page, it would actually be a different title. It would be The Tragedy of Muriel. So you go into the book thinking The Ascent of Muriel, it's going to show her rising to power. But instead, by calling it The Tragedy of Muriel, that's going to instantly change the whole impression of the book. Like, oh no, this is not going to go good. And I really like that kind of fake out, because I don't think I've ever seen that, where a book or a movie has had a false title. So you go in thinking it's going to be one title, but then when the title comes up, the title screen or whatever, it's actually a different title. Not a different movie, but a different title. And so what it would do by calling it The Ascent of Muriel, it would be saying that, oh, this is good. This is going to show this character rising to power. It's her ascent. But then when you actually open the book and like get to the title page right before the start of the book, the title will be The Tragedy of Muriel. And in the headers of the book, it would all be titled The Tragedy of Muriel. That is the real title of the book, but I lure you in with a false title, The Ascent of Muriel. And what that does is it bookends the series, because the descent of Inanna, her fall, and then the ascent of Muriel, her rise to power. But again, once you actually open the book up, you'll find out it's not The Ascent of Muriel, it's The Tragedy of Muriel. So I just really like that. And the way I kind of came up with that was by titling the Inanna book, The Descent of Inanna. So I thought, oh, it would actually make sense if I call this The Descent of Inanna to call the other book The Ascent of Muriel. And to do the thing I've been thinking about is to have a false title. So because I titled The Descent of Inanna, that gave me the idea for the title of The Tragedy of Muriel, sort of the fake title. It's going to be titled The Ascent of Muriel, when the real title inside the book is going to be The Tragedy of Muriel. So that's really just a rant, and I know once again I'm ranting. But yeah, that's just something that I thought of, because previously on my channel, I mentioned that I thought finally of the title, The Tragedy of Muriel. So I've talked about on my channel about that title. So that's kind of why I'm talking about it here. So yeah, that title, I just got the idea of that probably yesterday. But anyway, so yeah, so for the past 3 or 4 days, I've been actually writing The Descent of Inanna, and I've written 4 chapters, and I really like the way it's going. Basically, there's a lot of gods in the book. The book basically begins where there's a feast. So there are thousands of gods in the area, but you can meet you see several of the major gods. So there's 7 sort of elder gods, and then there's 50 major gods around the table. Then there's a bunch of minor gods. And so you're meeting several of them, and I'm just weaving in a lot of the backstory. And I think it's just going very well. So I am really happy with the way this is going. And yeah, so I don't really want to talk too much about it. And again, I'll just rant. And it would be far, far too much to try to explain anything. But yeah, so I'm actually writing The Descent of Inanna. I'm getting really excited about it. I really like the way it's going. I wish I could talk more about it, but I know I would just bore you guys to death and I'd run out of the battery. The battery is already kind of flickering low. So anyway, I think that's all I really need to say about it. So I am actually writing The Descent of Inanna. I started it about 4 days ago and I'm on chapter 4, and what I'll probably do is edit this video and post it, and then I think I'm going to continue working on it just because I'm really passionate about it right now. And you might be thinking, no one's going to be thinking this because no one's probably watching this video, especially here listening to my writing. I was working on Babylon Dithers, so you may be thinking like, what am I going to do about that? And am I just giving up on Babylon Dithers? Well, I am a very streaky writer. I write kind of whatever I feel motivated to write. So I don't feel any hesitation to jump from one project to another if I feel inspiration to, if I feel motivation to. I don't want to force myself to write Babylon Dithers if I feel I could be more productive working on another book. Basically, I just want to be productive. I don't care really what it's on. I don't care, about deadlines or anything like that. If I can feel the motivation to work on something, I want to write that because I feel since I'll be passionate about it, I'll do the best work with that book. Whereas if I try to force myself to write Babylon Dithers, I'll probably not really feel too motivated to do it. I'll probably be real slow to do it. I probably won't write really good stuff. Whereas right now, I am on fire with The Descent of Inanna. So I want to write as much as I can while the iron is hot. So that is why I'm shifting my focus, at least for now, to The Descent of Inanna. We'll see how it goes. Maybe I'll eventually reach a point where I kind of get stuck and I'll jump to a different project. But yeah, my main thing is I just want to be productive. I don't care what it's on. But for now, I feel really good about The Descent of Inanna. I am really feeling this book. Like, this is coming off really well. I'm really liking the plot. I'm really liking the characters. I'm liking what I'm doing with it. So I'm really excited about that. Anyway, I think that's about it. I haven't been playing very much video games this past week because I've just been real productive with those things I've talked about. I've been playing a little bit of my game Empire of Sin. I talked about that in my previous video. I kind of like that game. I haven't been playing it very much though. Maybe just not quite even an hour a day, if that. If at all. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. So yeah, that's going to be it for this video. So thank you guys for watching. Hope to see you next week or in another video. Bye. 2, 3, 4.